It's okay. It's okay. Not a problem. All right. Okay. So today's Torah portion is Vayikra, Leviticus, and basically we're learning about all the different offerings. Okay. And I just want to go over real quick, is that when we look at these, when it talks about a sin offering, we need to look at it as not necessarily being a sin offering, but a offering having to do with Isaac. You need to change the camera. Purification offering, because that's what it's about. All these offerings really are about purification, but the sin offering, or we call the katat, really has to do with purification, because it's when we sin, we become impure, or when we don't, especially if we accidentally do that, we don't even realize it. And then when it comes to our knowledge that we have done it, then we need to, confess our sin, seek God, confess our sin, and here bring an offering for sin or purification, because it has rendered us impure. Okay, and so we need to understand all these really are about purification. The olah, the katat, all of these have to do with purification, and which is for drawing close. The korbanim, to draw close, and that's the idea of these offerings, to help us to draw close to God, so that He can dwell in our midst. Okay. I know we hear a lot of people say that God is dwelling in us. Well, that's just a small portion. The idea is that God wants to dwell with us on earth. That was the idea of the Garden of Eden. That was the idea of the tabernacle. That's the idea of the temple. And that's the idea of the temple in the Messianic age to come. But more so, there won't be a temple in the world to come, as it says God and the Messiah will be the temple. Basically, He will dwell with us on earth, that all these things won't be necessary at that time anymore. Okay? And so we need to come to understand that a lot of this has to do with purification, not necessarily that it's a specific sin or anything like that, but that it's something that causes us to become impure, not be able to be in the presence of God. Okay? And when we really take a look at like Yom Kippur, yes, it's the Day of Atonement and is atoning for the people, but more so, it was atoning for the tabernacle or the temple, because during that time, all this stuff builds up, and it's like in a computer, you get all these programs, stuff like that, and you get junk and stuff that just kind of builds up, cause your computer becomes slow and stuff like that. So you got to clean it out once a year, in a sense, okay? And so that's kind of what this is that Yom Kippur is like a time of cleaning out the computer on Yom Kippur, because it's kind of getting slow, it needs to be purified, right? It needs to be purified, so continue do its job, okay? And that's what these are for us. We need to look at that. And so, like when we look at Yeshua, we always hear people say that he was a final sacrifice for sin for us. Well, He wasn't a sacrifice for sin. One, He wasn't a sacrifice. Two, He wasn't for sin. If anything, his symbolically, as Matthew and Paul and others have stated, that He was symbolically the Passover lamb, a memorial. And that's one of the reasons why we do Passover, because, as we're learning too, is that in the Messianic age, when the temple is rebuilt, what's the first celebration, the first vessel we're going to celebrate? Passover. Why? Because He promised His disciples that He would not eat of the Passover until He came into His kingdom. Okay? And once the temple is erected and it is sanctified and set apart, anointed, just like we see with the tabernacle, it was put together on the 1st of Nisan, started, and ready for Passover. The first temple was dedicated on the 1st of Nisan, and then came Passover. The second temple was erected, was dedicated on the first day of Nisan, and then came Passover. So the third temple is going to do the same thing, that once it's built, it will be dedicated on the 1st of Nisan, and then will come Passover. Okay? And we've got Passover coming up now. Passover will start a week from this Monday night. And in the diaspora goes for 8 days, and Israel goes for 7. But we will have our family Seder the first night. And we'll have our community Seder on the 4th of March, which is that Saturday of April. I'm sorry, thank you. We're in March. Of April 4th, okay? April 4th, that we'll gather here at 6, but we'll start at 7 promptly. That's the idea. Get everybody here, get everything, make sure everybody's got their stuff together, and we're ready to start at 7, okay? And, yeah, invite as many people as you want. Everybody is welcome to participate in it. And it's always been the theme that Yeshua is our Passover lamb. In that sense, symbolically, he becomes our Passover. It's through him that God will pass his judgment over us, okay, in that sense. And that it's a memorial. It's a memorial for what God has done for us when we left Egypt, for what God has done for us with the Messiah, and what God ultimately will do for us in the Messianic era and the world to come, okay? So that's what we have to look forward to, why it's important to understand this. And there's a good book by Daniel Lancaster, What About the Sacrifices? And you can read this, read in there. You can get that for First Fruits of Zion. It's an excellent book. Anyways, it talks about how Yeshua was not literally a sacrifice for sin, okay? He didn't meet any of the qualifications. For one thing, he was human. 2, he was beaten, torn, tortured, so all that. I mean, in order to be a sacrifice for sin, he had to be one of the animals, bull, goat, or sheep, right? Had to have no defects, right? And in the killing process, could not be tortured. It could not. It had to be very, very sharp knife done in one crossing, killed immediately in that sense, without pain. But as we see with Yeshua, he was tortured. He was blemished because of the torture that he suffered, and he was human. Not only that, but he was not taken to the north side, outside where they're supposed to do it, and his blood wasn't taken into the altar, or anything like that, right? At least on earth, right? But symbolically, he becomes that Passover. Not only that, but it becomes that sacrifice of Passover, which is a memorial, okay? He is a memorial. He's for all the people, okay? It says, when we read about Passover, God says to take a lamb for each household, and if your household is too small, gather with another household, right? And participate. But one of the things you have to do is you have to lay your hand on. We see this all in here, that the person who's bringing it has to lay their hand on it. Why? The one who's guilty and stuff. Because in that sense, what it's doing is it's a transference, okay? Our sins are being transferred, or we are being transferred onto that animal to take our place, okay? Because with sin, we should die, but God gives us grace, okay? And I know the church thinks that they're the only one with the grace aspect of it, but you know, God gave Adam and Eve grace. He's given Israel grace. Grace has always been around. It's not nothing new. Yeshua didn't bring grace. It was already there, okay? So the church has kind of exploited that aspect of it, thinking that they're the only ones with it, right? But we see that God has always been about grace. He's always given grace. He gave grace to King David. He gave grace to Samson. We see it all over the place. Grace is a major thing. He gave grace to Abraham, who by human means had a son instead of waiting for God, right? God still blessed him, still took him on. So grace has always been there. And so the whole point of this is that what we're learning here is the purification, is that purity. One of the reasons why a human being in flesh cannot go before God is because in some way, in some fashion, we have been impure. We have violated his commandments. Even in, I think it's in 1 John chapter 4, I can't remember exactly, where it says that, talking about sin, that sin is disobedience of God's Torah. Okay? So we do know that. It's in the New Testament. It's all over. And so, I say to people who say that, we don't really need to have the Old Testament, as they say. The Old Testament, I don't call it that, I call it Tanakh. They just need the New Testament. Then I would say to them, quit using the Old Testament to justify your other stuff, because they do that, right? Just use the New Testament. If everything is there, then use that. But you can't. Why? Because in order to understand the New Testament, you have to understand where it comes from, what it's all about, okay? And without the old, you can't have the new, okay? And even the terms old and new are sacrilegious. It shouldn't even be, okay? Maybe new writings, old writings, new writings, but they're still the same book. And that's one of the things I like about the Complete Jewish Bible. And there's other Messianic Bibles too, that there's no separation between what they call the old and the new. It's all one book, okay? And that's the way it should be. And as we get into this now, it's up to us to bring, when we realize we have sinned, the idea is to repent. When it comes before us, we realize that it's to repent, to turn back to God. And the sacrifices was a way of being obedient to God for the purification. Now we've sinned, we've asked God for forgiveness, now we have to do the purification aspect of it, right? That includes, as we'll learn more about, immersion, or what the church calls baptism. It's always been a Jewish thing forever, right? God is the one who instituted it back with Moses, okay? When the children of Israel went through the Red Sea on dry ground and stuff like that, that was the first immersion. That was the first major national immersion, okay? Going from an old people to becoming a new people, slaves to freedom. And that's what we will be celebrating Passover about. So that's what we have to look forward to. And he gives us all these different things about who has sinned. The priest has sinned, okay, you got to do this. A leader has sinned, you got to do this. If you've sinned, you got to do this. All these different things, what we need to do for purification, okay? And for family purification, it's very important. For women to dress modestly, and that includes men. It's not just women. Men need to dress modestly too, especially in the presence of a woman, okay? I know a lot of people like to, it gets hot out. A lot of men will go bare-chested or whatever, but in the presence of a woman, you need to put a shirt on. I mean, that's just the proper thing to do. Okay. So I mean, those are little things, but still, those are things that we need to think about. Anything that could cause someone to sin, and that's where we go into where Yeshua is talking about in his part there, where he's talking about these are things that Shammai went with. See, mostly Yeshua agreed with Hillel, but there are things here, and this is where we read here, where Yeshua, who actually agreed with Shammai, who was more strict with his interpretation of the Torah, and Yeshua agreed one thing with divorce, that whoever divorces his wife must give her a get. Okay, we know that, but Hillel says that it can be for anything, even for burning the food. But Shammai says it's only for infidelity, right? And that's what Yeshua agrees upon. Yeshua agrees upon that. It's for infidelity. If you divorce your wife for any other reason, then you're causing her to be an adulteress, okay? But if it's for the reasons of fornication, and I will tell you this, I'm not saying if your husband is beating you or abusing you in any way that you should stay with him, okay? Those are grounds of infidelity, whether it doesn't have to be sexual, okay? A lot of people lose sight of that. It can be sexual. Majority of the time it's going to be sexual because men are lustful and it's pigs, okay? We'll say it right out. They can be. Not all men are. There are good men out there too. So, but a lot of men are. If anybody's going to commit adultery, it's going to be the husband. It usually is, okay? But the idea that Yeshua sided with Shammai on adultery or divorce, or what was the other thing? Because there's another thing is adultery, divorce, vows. There we are. He agreed with Shammai on the vows. If you're going to make a vow, make a vow. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. But don't make a vow. The idea is, the important thing is, don't ever make a vow, especially if it's something that you can't keep. It's like a promise. Don't make a promise you can't keep. That's just as simple as that. Adultery, Yeshua goes on, and even in Shammai taught too, that just to, if you're lusting after a woman, he's talking about married men, okay? But single men shouldn't be doing it either. But to lust after a woman in your heart is to commit adultery with her in that sense, because what you think it, then you do it. The opportunity arises, what happens? You do it, right? Bill Cosby said that a long time ago in one of his comedy things. First you do it, first you say it, then you do it. And that's the truth. It is really, when we really look at that. So we think it or say it, then we'll do it, most likely, if given the opportunity to do so. And we really need to keep it out of our mind, keep our mind on Torah, keep our mind clean, pure, right? Having to do with purity, right? And then let's think about adultery and idolatry, because they're basically the same thing. One is physical, one is spiritual. Idolatry is spiritual against God. Adultery is physical against mankind, against a wife, a husband, whatever it might be. And so that's what we read about in Isaiah too. And I just want to let people know that if you are dependent on the government for everything, if you are, I know there's people need help and stuff like that, that's one thing. But if that's all you do is dependent on the government and believe in the government to take that the government's going to save you, that's idolatry, okay? It's okay to get help. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all you do and you rely on the government for everything and believe in the government and stuff, a government is man-made, okay? God does give us leaders, but government is man-made. And when we start to trust in government, which is the old thing that a lot of the kings and stuff would do, that they would want to be, that they declared themselves to be God. And so we see that even with Daniel, where these men who were against Daniel were able to convince the king to have the people come to him, make a law that they only, for whatever time it was, that they could go to the king to get things instead of praying to their gods, right? And that's what's been about. It's been about power. It's been about people becoming God, okay? A system, what?
Self-edification.
Yeah, self-edification. And we see that even today in many different countries, and especially here in the U.S., we want free stuff, right? Well, I'm sorry, things that come free are not worth anything because you haven't had to work for it. When you work for stuff, when you suffer for stuff, and you get it, it's worth more because you, in that sense, have worked for that.
And this is why we have all of these things that we do, these commandments that we follow, because they are for mindfulness.
Mindfulness, yes. Yes. And that's what God said too, be mindful, and that's why, when Israel left Persia and stuff, right, came back to Israel, they were allowed to come back. They came back, they had blessings for everything. Why? Because they had said to themselves that it is me who have accomplished this, not anybody else, not God. I did this, right? And when we do that, we forget about God. And that's one of the sins that Israel had, that Judah had, why they went to Babylon, is because they forgot, they didn't thank God for these things. That's why, God doesn't say we have to bless our food before we eat. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a tradition. But God does command us that when we've eaten our fill, that we should give thanks to him, And I know in society today, it's kind of a hard thing to do when you're not used to that, But there's no problem, there's no issue praying before you eat, but also praying after we eat, because the idea is that give thanks. The idea is to give thanks. Once God is taking care of us, met our needs, we give thanks to him, knowing that this is where it comes from. He is the one who has given it to us. And in so doing, we praise and thank him, right? But what the government wants to do, and we see that even today, is that just like the idols, you know, uh, one man, it says here, takes a tree, cuts it down, uses it for firewood, cooks his food, and then he makes an idol with it, right? And says, thank you for giving me everything I have, right? I mean,
Jeremiah 10.
yeah, Jeremiah 10 is another one. I mean, good examples of that. That what that's a mental illness. If you if you do that, how can you do that? It's not logical. You know, God is the one who created the tree. He's the one who provided it. He's the one who provided you the knowledge on how to cut it down and to use it for what its purpose is. And then you do that. You know, that's like stabbing him in the back.
Well, that's why Mishaga means curse, but it also means change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things that cannot change should not be.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So as we're looking at this, I just want people to realize, now I know if people need help, that's one thing. But, you know, get off as soon as you can and continue relying on God. Now, God does set up, He has set up our nation to help other people. But the thing is the government, in its design, when it brought this stuff out, the welfare system and stuff, the idea was to help people who needed it. But the idea behind it was that people would start trusting the government for these things, which is actually a communist idea, because that's an atheist. That's what Karl Marx talked about, because he's atheist. Even though he was Jewish, don't put that together. He may have been Jewish ancestry, whatever, but he was not religious or anything. He didn't even know the Torah.
Secular.
He was very secular. And the idea was to get people to quit with the religion and start trusting in the government to provide for them. And that was the whole idea of communism: provide jobs, provide whatever for the state. Okay? That's the whole idea. And that's what we see even today. That's what communism is all about. Socialism is a minor, smaller thing that, in a sense, tries to do the same thing to a degree. Capitalism has its faults too. Don't you know? Market system is pretty good. But the system we had before capitalism came into being, we had here in the United States before that, was free market, that you could start your own business, you could do what you wanted with that and stuff like that. But when capitalism came in, that's where you started to get big businesses and corporations and stuff like that. That I believe corporations and stuff like that, that their only goal is to make money on the backs of people, are no different than the slave drivers that drove the slaves. Okay, and that's why I'm against corporations and stuff like that. I'm not saying that they're completely evil. They do provide jobs, but slavery provided jobs for people too, right?
There was just no retirement.
There was no overtime plan, no medical, no nothing, right? You know? And so that's why we really have to look at this stuff. Is it stuff that do we trust in the government more than God? And if you trust in the government more than God, then you are an idolater in that sense of what idolatry is, right? Or adultery. If you're lusting after another woman, it's adultery. Even if you haven't committed it, it's still in your heart. And it's the same thing here with government, is that if you're looking to the government to answer your needs and not God, you know, if we're getting welfare or whatever, you know, and because we need the help, we should be thanking God that our government is able to provide it. But we shouldn't be thanking our government or the people that are running it, because they're just human beings. It's a man-made system. God is the one ultimately providing for us. And I know people say, well, what about the rich? You know, well, you know what? God made people rich. He made people poor. And even Yeshua said, you'll always have poor with you, right? Always. And rich people will be judged by how they use their wealth. If they use it selfishly, guess what? They're going to be judged harshly. If they use their wealth to help it. Now, I do like what Elon Musk, I'm not a high degree person of Elon Musk, but he did come out and say today that, and which is also interesting, is that he wants to pay all the TSA agents and stuff with his own money, so that they can work and stuff like that and not be paid back. But I I can't remember which Democrat said this, said that has to be okayed by Congress first. It's like, what? If he wants to do it, why can't he do it? You know?
Especially if it's,
Yeah, and I'm not saying Democrat, they have all of them have their own issues and stuff like that, you know. And but that's the thing. Now, to me, that's someone who knows he has money and is able to help people who don't, is willing to do it for a time period, a short period, temporary period, just to help them get through this time, right?
just a kind of a thought here, you know, we're taught, I mean, I hate to bring this up, but we're taught that carrion birds are unclean. And when you act like that, you act like a carrion bird. You're being an opportunist.
Yes, opportunist. Yeah.
Politically, spiritually, doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
like all of them. I mean, you watch enough of it and you see it's just a tug of war
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
Genghis and Mengus, and no one ever,
Yeah.
no one ever wins.
No, no one ever wins. They're always fighting back and forth. They never can work together.
And
Yeah.
we're caught in the middle of that.
Yeah, and that's
They
just
tell
it.
us to hate each other.
Yeah, and we can't. That's why we have to overcome that aspect of it. That's why I do not try and talk about politics. The only thing I bring up in there is that not all rich people are evil,
Well, and
you know,
we
and
have
people
a
who,
neighbor, Akabot Yisrael.
yeah. But with what's going on today, where we got people saying that the rich need to share with other people, I'm sorry, that's not true.
Why don't we work with them?
Yeah, a lot of rich people, when rich people became rich, it wasn't because they wanted to become rich, it's because they wanted to provide for their family. And then as the opportunity grew, they started doing that. Now, like I said, not all rich people are bad. You got rich people who are selfish, and then you got rich people who do things to help other people, you know.
But think of yourself. If somebody comes to you and they slap you in the face and they tell you that crock pot is theirs, are you going to give them the crock pot?
Depends.
Boxers or briefs?
Boxers or briefs? Boxers.
But I mean, but I mean, just the thought of it. If somebody comes in and tries
Yeah,
to
I know. Yeah, exactly.
take it by force, why don't?
I bought that with my own money, hard-earned money, you know.
Right, but now
If you want to use it, that's fine.
If I come to you and I say, well, I'm throwing a potluck, my crock pot's broken, may I borrow your crock
Right,
pot?
correct, yes. But to demand, I've had too many people demand things from me, because, I've helped a lot of people, and I've had some people, small amount of people, come back to me demanding that I help them again, even though I've helped them out of this, or come and get them because they decided to get drunk or get stoned after all the stuff we've done to help them and stuff, and demand that I come and get them. No, I said no. You have to discern. Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yep.
From the other perspective, and being in that perspective, from my perspective myself, because I've had hard times.
Yeah.
That which is evil to you, do not do to your fellow.
Right. Yep.
But help your fellow.
Yeah, lift up your fellow. And if you have the means to help somebody, do it. But I've had people send people to me, saying, and to help these people. I don't know who they are, or to stay at my house. I don't know who they are. I've got a family. I don't know who they are, And then these people who send them are like, well, you're supposed to. That's your job.
And then they call you greedy.
Yeah, exactly. I've had that happen. I'm not, whatever. God's, the thing is, I help a lot of people. I see people for help. God will tell me if I should or shouldn't. I mean, I have picked up hitchhikers on the side of the road only when I've got the discernment from God that it's good. And we've had some good talks about God.
And I'm sorry. You're humble. You're a good person. But please don't hold it against me if somebody takes advantage of you and I get offended for you.
That's okay. I get it. But the idea here is the purification of, we see, of the offerings, and then of even going further with some of the instruction, and of idolatry. Idolatry is probably the biggest point of impurity that there is, where we do not give God the thanks that He deserves, you know. And it's something that we need to really think about. I'm not saying any of you are like that. I'm just saying for anybody, especially those who are out here listening, watching this out there, is that we really need to fear God. And here's another thing too, you know, I hear so many people from, you know, even from the church and stuff, you know, talk about fearing God. Well, why should I fear Him? I thought we weren't supposed to be afraid. Well, the fear it's talking about isn't to be afraid. It's to be mindful and to give proper respect. He is greatly to be respected, right? So it's not necessarily that we fear Him. It's that we just understand and give Him the acknowledgement of who He is and respect His greatness, right? Who He is. And that's what Yeshua even said. He said, don't fear the ones, don't be afraid of the ones who can kill your body, but be afraid of the one who can kill both your body and your soul. And He's not talking about necessarily being afraid, but just understand that if you're going to sin and stuff, then you need to fear. If you're going to not follow God, then yeah, you need to fear in that sense. Be afraid. And that's what we know, that like Sodom and Gomorrah and other places like that, they had no fear of God. That's why even Abraham said about Egypt, or even in Philistine when he was there, that why he did that with his wife is that he didn't think there was a fear of God there, right? And that's why he did what he did, you know, about his wife and stuff. And we see that. And that's what the communism, that's what atheism and stuff like that moves towards, is that there's no accountability. When we don't fear God, then we believe there's no accountability. And so we can do whatever we want. There's no right laws, no moral inhibitions that we should follow, right? We can do whatever we want. And that's what's wrong. And that's the thing that's wrong. And that's where we get, even with, like I said, with when we worship the government, when we are expecting stuff from the government, expect the government to take care of us, using the people's money, but we're capable of doing it too, to take care of ourselves and stuff, and not giving God thanks for when we do get this stuff, then we're doing the same thing that happened with Israel before they left for Babylon, is that they didn't give God the thanks. They didn't rejoice in His festivals. They didn't thank God for their needs that God was fulfilling for them. Instead, I did this for myself, or the government did this for me, or whatever, you know. And we gotta, you know, be careful that is such a precipice that we can be on. I don't have a problem with, you know, people that are on welfare or whatever that need it, but it should only be a temporary thing for those who are able-bodied and stuff. People who are handicapped, different things like that aren't able to, like I take care of a lot of people that they aren't able. Some of them do go work, do different things, but some of them can't, you know. And so people like that, you know, I also believe in helping people out when it comes to finances too. But like I said, not being an enabler. It's like drug abuse, alcoholism, that, you know, that instead of standing up and saying, hey, enough's enough, you need to really, you know, get better, we give them money and say, well, here, you know, go out. We're enabling them, right? Or however it might be, or not addressing it the way we should. You know, we become enablers. And so we need to be able to watch that. We need to understand that that it was originally intended for temporary, you know, but also take care of those who can't take themselves the rest of their life, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with us taking care of the poor. That's what we're supposed to do, take care of the poor, the wretched, the whatever, you know, the people who are in need. A lot of times it should be temporary, but in some cases, like really handicapped people that can't do anything, yeah, we need to take care of them.
And just, you know, a thought on that one too, because, you know, if we don't step up and do this, right, and if we're not mindful of this, it's really the handicapped and the poor who are going to suffer the most, because the government weaponizes that stuff.
Yep, they do. Yep. And so we get, you know, where we can, that's what we need to do. There's a lot of organizations out there that help the poor, you know. It's not a handout. And we do see that even in the Bible, where God said not to harvest to the corners of your field, right? And don't go back and pick the grapes and stuff that have been left after the first harvest, right, or whatever. That's for the poor, for the foreigner, right? But they still got to go work for it, right? We with Ruth, you know, she had to go to the field to go pick grain and stuff, right, and stuff. She still had to go do it. She did it for her mother-in-law, right?
Yeah.
But she still had to go do it. Still had to go out there and put an effort in to get it, because as the Bible says, whoever isn't going to work shouldn't eat, right? And that's part of the struggle we have. But in the things we struggle, we learn. We learn to thank God for the things we have. And we learn to appreciate the things we have. I remember a friend whose parents would give him a new car, and he would smash it up, and they'd give him another new car, and you know, and he didn't care. He'd burn the tires out, whatever, you know, because his parents would give him a new car or whatever was needed for it. He never learned to appreciate it, you know, and that's, God will give us stuff too, but it's when we learn to appreciate and thank Him for that. He takes care of our needs, you know, and I've watched it over the years where God has taken care of my family, where we've had some desperate needs, and we've trusted God, and it's come down to the rope, but God has always provided, and we always given Him thanks for that. And even in tough times, you know, we kind of, how are we going to do it, you know? And we both know, we've grown to know that not to worry about it. God will take care of it. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. So, and that's what I want you guys to realize, is that, and out there, that God will take care of us, but we need to also give Him thanks. Okay, is it tit for tat? No, it's what we should be doing already. We should be giving God thanks for everything. In the Talmud, it talks about that in the good times, we have no problem giving God thanks, right? But it says even in the bad times, we should be giving God thanks. We should be giving God thanks even more in the bad times. Good times, that's natural. Hey, thank you, God. The bad times, it's hard to thank anybody. But thank God. But thank God anyways. Do it anyways. It's tough, but it's where it is. And another famous rabbi in the Talmud says that when these hard times come, don't look at it as something bad, but look at it as an opportunity to worship God, to learn and seek God more, right? Pray more. And that's what we need to do. All right. Bow your heads for the Aaronic blessing. We'll go in here. But like I said, remember, the 4th of April, here, gather at 6 for Passover, for our community Passover Seder. Monday night, a week from this Monday night, was it the 2nd? It's the evening of the 1st. That's the evening of the 1st of April. Starts Passover, okay? And the 8th is the last day. So, anyways, all right. So, our God and God of our fathers, bless us with the threefold blessing in the Torah written by the hand of Moses, your servant, and pronounced by Aharon and his servant, his sons, the priests, your holy people, as it is said. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord make His face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn His face toward you and grant you peace. Yevarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha. Shalom. So go in peace. Have a great Shabbat, great week this week. Remember, Tuesday night at 7 is our Torah Club. And then we're Wednesday night study at 7. And then for first night of Passover and last night of Passover, which are both Wednesdays, we won't have our Wednesday night study. Okay? So that's what we got coming up. I'm trying to think. Oh, tomorrow we have several ladies, three for baby shower tomorrow. 3 women and their babies, Alder, Zelda, and Brinley coming, and so we're gonna have baby showers for them tomorrow. At what time? 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, and everybody's welcome to come to that. And I know Cheryl's got games set up, so crafts and different things like that. So, so it should be a fun time for you ladies. Men too can join that too, I guess, you know. I've seen that.
Make sure to get something for the baby.
Yeah, get something for the babies. It's true. So, other than that, I think that's about it. Again, if you're not from Bemidji, we invite you to move to Bemidji. It's a beautiful place. Even in the wintertime, it's beautiful.
A little bit more bitter.
A little more, yeah, bitter cold, but not bittersweet.
Exactly.
Anyways, but it's a great place. There's us here. We'd love you to join us here and be a part of it. And also enjoy Bemidji with, especially in the summertime, with fishing and swimming and all kinds of activities that go on here. So, great community. So, other than that, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos.